Thank you for joining us today on Worldwide Slot Car Chat, episode 36. I'm your host, Greg Gaub. We've got most of our regulars, quite a full chat room today, already 16 people, and I expect more will join in. We've got RK, Petrucci, Russ Paver, Mike Maurer, John Kitt, Jeremy B., Martin Dodd, Mr. Stumbly, Stig Racer, Leo Capaldi, Chris Walker, and other people who have joined us before. Looks like I saw Ray on there. Yeah, so we're going to have a good time. I do have a couple of topic ideas. I want to plug myself a little bit right now, and we'll let people plug things after I'm done plugging my thing. If you have something you want to plug, but as many of you know, I am the current producer and retailer for the Old Slot Racer wood track routing kit products, the DVD, the router base, the strips, and the taping tool and whatnot. And I ship those internationally. Well, not too long ago, I ran out of the CNC cut plexiglass router bases, which have the 3.5 and 4, and the different radiuses for different lane spacings pre-cut. All you had to do is drill the holes to attach it to your router, and you're good to go. Well, I looked into getting those manufactured because I don't have the machinery to do that properly. So I looked at the company that I get the routing strip from before I drill all the holes and everything. And it was going to be an astronomical number. It would not have been economically feasible for me to sell those router bases, at least not at the price that I was selling them for, and not at a price people would be willing to pay. But I have these machines here that print all kinds of wonderful things out, and they're big enough for a router base. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll 3D print them. That's easy enough. I've got all the information I need. I did the CAD, in like 5 minutes, easy peasy, lemon squeezy, no problem. But then I'm like, well, I would have to print these solid for people to be able to drill holes wherever they need to drill holes. But why not add value? Because if I'm printing them, I'm not just going to print off a whole bunch of them. I'm going to print them to order, which means that I can also custom print their router bases for them. All I would need to know is where the holes go for their router. And that's as easy as putting your router upside down on a table, laying a ruler across it, and getting a nice top-down shot of your router base. And then I just throw that image into my CAD program, calibrate with the ruler in the image, and then I put the holes where they need to be. So that was obvious. Hey, anybody who's ordering a kit or a router base, tell me about your router, and I'll custom make that base so you don't even have to drill holes. You just screw it in and go for it. So awesome. If you're interested, call me up. But I had just finished an order for a guy who didn't want the typical 3.5, and 4-inch lane spacing options that the router base comes in. He wanted Scalextric because he's doing a routed digital track, and he's going to put the Scalextric lane changer pieces into the wood, and wanted to maintain that lane spacing. And the router base that I previously sold doesn't have that lane spacing. So I redesigned not only his router base to fit his router, but to also have the Scalextric lane spacing radius on the router base. And before I printed it up, I sent him pictures just to verify that it looked good on his end. He said, you know what, I might want to make a Carrera-based wood track at some point in the future. Can we put that on there? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I went out and measured a piece of Carrera track, and I put on a radius for Carrera track on his router base. So he's getting a 100% custom, never existed before router base that fits his router with 4 screw holes, but one of them is offset a little bit, whatever that's about. But this router base will only fit his model router, and it has lane spacing options for Scalextric Sport Track and Carrera digital, 132nd, 124th track. And I love adding this value. I enjoy doing the CAD because it's fairly simple, and people don't have to drill their holes. They're good to go pretty much when they get the router base. Same price as before. So if you're interested in doing this, but you don't want that lane spacing, you don't want to drill holes or whatever, call me up. We'll talk about it. We'll get the router base made just for your router. And I can still print them solid, if you don't have a router yet, so you don't know where the holes are going to be. I can go ahead and print it solid so you can drill holes into it. But if you have a router, send me a picture. I'll make the holes for you.
Greg?
Yes, sir.
What was your cost on the router base?
The router base plate itself was selling for $20. I still sell them for $20.
Okay. The custom ones?
The custom one, yeah. I mean, the previous model that I had in stock that I was selling with the kit was $20 for the base plate. They are still $20 for the base plate, but would have cost almost that whole $20 for me to have them manufactured in plexiglass again. So what's the point?
Well, I'll get with you in the future, near future. I need to get a router first, and then I can give you measurements.
You know where to find me.
Well, Greg, first of all, kudos to you for making lemonade. What a great solution. Yeah, it's great.
Well, thank you, sir. Did anybody have any questions about that before we allow someone else to plug their wares or their favorite website or proxy race or seeing none? Does anybody else want to plug anything of any kind whatsoever?
Well, I can just say, if you look on the forums, I've posted some stuff that my daughter was doing. My daughter was inundated with orders, by the way, this year. It was tough. Yeah, it was tough for her to catch up. We're out of the XK120s. We have a couple of 340 Americas left, and the Bug Night Sprites. She's still building. Like it's been really, really a good year for her. But if figures, I'm debating. Does anybody want to try those resin set screw wheels, 1/32 scale? And I do inserts for them, and I do this all really for ourselves and for her cars. But if that's of interest to anybody, and it's made of Task 2 resin. They have, I think, is it 540 set screw, and it's drilled and tapped, and as long as you don't over tighten it, just like an aluminum, it basically has the tensile strength and all the characteristics of aluminum, so they work quite well. Anyway, so. And if anyone is interested, I have no idea. I mean, what to sell them for, but I just want to know if there's anybody out there who could find a use for them if they're scratch building.
What are they for specific cars, or what size is they?
They're scale 15 inches, and they'll fit Ninco classic wheels, both or tires, excuse me, both the wide and the narrow. They fit actually quite a number of different tires. I use them primarily for everything from the 1.5 liter Formula One builds that I do, even the Cheetah that I built, and then Ferrari GTO. Those are all our wheels, and then the inserts we make ourselves as well. So everything from Barani's, Porsche 5 bolt pattern, you name it, we make it. So anyway, if that's it, pardon me, sorry.
What axles are they for?
Oh, I'm sorry, 3/32, right? And they're exact 3/32. That's another issue of I don't know how well they would go on like a slotted axle and so forth, because there are different sizes, but we made them specifically for 3/32. We use both piano wire for the front and drill blanks. Say that 5 times fast for the rear.
Matte black paint.
Oh, did I ever screw that one up?
My other question was, so related to axles, I forget, you mentioned slotted, and I'm not that tuned in with all this stuff like Dennis and Chris are. Are the slotted ones oversized or undersized?
I think they're slightly oversized. Chris would know that better than I would.
So but it's resin, so it could be reamed out if you needed to.
Yeah, although you'd have to use a pretty hefty drill bit, because again, it's Task 2 resin, which is really quite robust. It's not like a regular smooth on 300. This is actually, and they're cast under 65 pounds of pressure, so they're really, and that's one of the reasons they perform quite well. So anyway, I didn't know if there was, I seem to have been getting a few emails lately about them, and I just wanted to know if anyone else was interested in them, to give them a try, because to be honest with you, I don't know how well they would. I know what I have to do to make them work. I just don't know if other people would, and I hesitate to send anything out into a market that people would go, oh yeah, like I paid X number for it, and it don't bloody work. So
do you have?
If you're going to do that, it's always better to use reaming wheels. Is okay, it's not a smart idea.
Right.
Again, depending on what level of hobby you're involved in, if you like watching your cars go around the track, ream all the wheels you want. If you are really interested in racing them, get the right goddamn size axle for your wheels. Don't be doing that. So with John's wheels being resin, I would definitely, pick up some 3/32 inch drill blanks and just leave it at that. Don't be reaming out resin.
And to your point, Chris, the other sort of, and again, maybe, and this is the conservative Canadian talking, I know they'd work really well as fronts. As rears in racing, I don't know. Going around the track, no problem. Racing, I don't know how well they would stand up.
Well,
But
yes.
but certainly for fronts in racing, I think they would be fine.
Do you have any good pictures that you want to screen share with? Because, showing our viewers what it looks like.
I can actually go and get some, but I
think it would be a good idea for you to go ahead and show, go ahead and take a picture with your phone, get it on your computer so you can screen share a nice in focus picture. And then at the same time, we'll get your best contact information. So anybody who's watching the video will say, I want those wheels, tickety-tackety, I'll send an email.
Awesome. So yeah, again, I didn't want to get too crazy about it yet because they're not in development stage, but they're good for me. They might not necessarily be good for others. So but I really enjoy if someone else can use them and find some joy in putting them on a car and getting it around a track, that would just make me so pleased.
Yeah, let's talk about it in a few minutes when you get that picture. Does anybody else have anything they want to plug or talk about, Paul?
Yeah, I was going to ask John for his email address, but if he's going to put it up after the end of that thing, because last time he gave it to me, I lost it. I filed it.
We'll get it, and I'll put it in.
I'll give it to you right now. It's KIT. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go on.
Oh, KIT 9161.
9161. Yeah.
At.
Yeah.
Rogers. ROGERS.
Yeah.
.com.
.com. And that says all little letters, or how they say it.
All lowercase.
I put it in the
Excellent.
chat there.
Oh,
Verify
thanks, Greg.
chat correctly.
Okay, I'm going to go and do my best karsh on some wheels.
I'll put the email address in the video description as well later on when I post the video.
Excellent.
We'll come back
I
to
definitely want to see what his figures are like because I like his figures. I was watching his. John, on your video you had the monogram how to paint the faces.
Yeah.
Where'd you get them from?
Oh,
Because
well,
I can't get them anywhere over here.
No, I used to build military models as a youngster, and I hung out with some military modelers, and that's where I really learned how to paint figures. I was really crap at airplanes and tanks, but I was fairly good at the figures.
So have you got is there a list of how you paint the faces? Because you put up on your video there was is it a monogram or is it I can't remember if it was monogram, but it showed you how to do the different areas.
Yeah, it was monogram. Shepard Payne, who was probably one of the best figure painters ever. I mean, he did museum quality work. He did a whole series of dioramas for monogram, both aircraft and armor. And in those boxes, they had a color supplement. It was 4 pages. And he described how to paint a face. And, everything was almost like paint by numbers, if you remember those.
Yeah.
As a youngster. Yeah. And I have those scans. Again, I'd be more than happy to email those to anyone.
Yeah, if you can recommend one of his books, then I'll try and find it.
Yeah, I highly recommend his books. And what's really interesting, he was up in Canada years and years and years ago, and I didn't get to attend, but some of the folks in modeling clubs did, and they said he only used like 3 or 4 colors. It's just amazing. He would just like blend everything in. And
hopefully I'm going to get the missus to paint my figures. So the little more help I can get for her, the better.
The real trick is, it's all about the wash and putting the light colors on top, and it's amazing the results that you get.
But if you could just let me know what it was and everything, and I'll troll the internet.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I have one cautionary tale though. When you really start getting into it, the real trick is to know when to stop.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can just wash it too much and you just go, oh man, what the heck did I do? But okay, yeah, no, absolutely.
Looks like a bad drag queen.
Cool. I'll see you in a bit.
Another topic. Again, we'll swing back around to John when he's got the wheel picture to show off. Does anybody else have anything they want to talk about or show off before we get to new guest introductions?
I got a quick little thing, Greg.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Just been playing around. Is that up yet?
Yep.
Okay. Been asked to do some test work on some 050 motors. This is a newish one. Lots of guys have complained over the years that, you know, the 050s or the slim cans are fairly anemic, which is true. And the only reason they've always been anemic is they've always had weak little magnets. So there's a new motor out that's been out a while, actually. This is an 050 with neo magnets. So for any guys that like racing on plastic track and are not allowed to use traction magnets, this is like no magnet racing. The motor is a little monster. It's rated at 35K with neo magnets on it. So accordingly, you have to gear it. So this is geared 732. And it works quite well. This is in a Mr. Schlottcar chassis as well that I've been doing some work with on their pods and helping out with chassis. So if you're looking for, you know, want to play around with a funky 050 motor, this will dispel any of your historic beliefs that they don't go well. It's a little monster. And as far as handling goes in a no magnet situation, they weigh less than an S-can, so if you use them in a sidewinder configuration, there's less weight adding to the polar moment of inertia, so they do handle appreciably better. This one, those are not the tires I will be using on the back. Those are air ride hubs filled with sponge and just been taken down. So this is still in build. I'm waiting for some wheels and tires. I've tried some different ones on it just for test purposes, and it's a monster little bugger car.
Yeah.
Is that your famous suspension on that, Chris?
Sorry?
Is that your famous suspension on that with those O-rings?
Well, yes, but yes, and you should clear up there's lots of O-rings on the market. Any of them that look like little washers that you buy at Home Depot or the hardware store that are vinyl O-rings, do not use them. They're far too hard. You need them either made out of urethane and or silicone, which is this is exactly what these ones are. Basically what it does is it duplicates, you see a lot of guys using tape on the bottom of the pods. And the tape is basically to control the flex of the pod as it rotates. Using the washers, number one, looks a whole bunch more funky and cooler. In a proxy race, tape will tend to fatigue where these won't tend to fatigue. And you never run the risk of the tape peeling off the bottom of the chassis and stuff like that. So the best washers, if you're interested, either come from Dart Hobbies. They are urethane.
Dart?
Mr. Schlottcar now makes them out of silicone, and you can buy those from Alan Smith at 132 Schlottcar US and a bunch of other places.
Was the first one Dart?
Dart, D-A-R-T.
D-A-R-T.
That's right, I'm writing it all down here.
Yeah, well, I gave you the name of Dart Hobbies. I cannot guarantee the level of customer service you may get. Art lives like 15 minutes from my house, and I've known him for years. So all else fails, I can run over and beat on his door and get the stuff. He does great work. there are forums with posts and threads that some people have been less than enthralled with the level of customer service they've got. So I'm just telling you where you can get them. I'm not telling you if you actually will get them. Anyway.
Where do we get?
Sorry.
Where do we get the motor?
The motors, Andy Smith has them, Professor Motor.
Okay.
So, and it is a Professor Motor special orders. So if you do want one of the motors, if you're looking for brands, go under Professor Motor. And then, because it's not a slotted or it's not anything else, Andy's ordered these directly from China, and they're pretty funky to play around with if you want something that's you know, a little bit different. And on your track, Greg, with the steel rails, it's like you know.
Oh, I got plenty of wood tracks to play.
It's like non-cheating cheating, if you want to put it that way. So
I've got some high downforce motors in my collection.
Yeah, but you will need, with all these little motors, any of the FF050 motors, they work much better with high numeric ratios. So again, this one has a 7-tooth pinion and a 32-tooth spur, and I may go to a 6-tooth pinion.
Yeah.
The pipes, the tubing down the side, is that plastic tubing, Chris?
That's very, very high-tech unobtainium styrene plastic tubing from any hobby shop with a bit of paint. It routes the wires, it won't foul with the interior, it adds zero weight, and it sort of looks a bit funky as well. So
yeah, I like it. It's tidy.
Yeah, well, you know, slot cars are machines, they should look good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's brilliant.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Anybody have any
That's
last
brilliant.
questions for Chris, or motor questions, or anything they want to plug or talk about before we do introductions? Hearing none.
I've got a nice new blue and yellow car turn up today.
Oh, go ahead and show it.
Hold on a minute. I'll go and get it.
Okay. While he's getting that car, we'll go ahead and do new guest introductions. I do not recognize Garth Frudd as having been on here. Mr. Frudd, Garth, would you like to do an introduction and tell us all about your slot-related history? You're currently muted, in case you don't know, and you'll need to unmute yourself. There you go. You should be good, but we're not hearing you. So I might have to work on that. I'll move on. We can come back to Garth in a bit. Mr. CGY Racer, you want to talk about your slot-related history with us?
Hey guys.
Welcome.
So my name's Rob Mallison. Bit of an introduction into slot cars. Let's see. Oh, back in 2004, when I used to live in Calgary, used to work for a high-tech company called Nortel Networks, Northern Telecom. We went through 3 name changes back then, and a friend of mine that worked at Nortel, he called me over and went over there, and he had a Jeff Gordon car, 132nd Jeff Gordon car, and I looked down and I said, "What the heck is that?" And he said, "Oh, it's a Scalextric Jeff Gordon car." It was the one from 2004 that they made, and he had it all decked out with slotted gear and everything. And he said, "Yeah, you should join us at the hobby shop. We got a nice 10 by 20 4-lane Scalextric track." So I went over there and took a look at it and thought it was pretty neat. And then I proceeded to buy my first slot car, and it was a Scalextric Viper front engine. Wasn't a great car. I should have listened to him. He told me to buy a Trans Am or a NASCAR as a beginner car. And then enjoyed it, raced with the guys there a little bit, and then decided, well, I'm going to build a truck at home. And I asked my friend Kelly, well, how large of a truck should I make? How big of a table? He said, well, as big as you can make it. So I went and built an 8 by 24 table in my basement. So, and then I needed track, and some guy on eBay was selling a whole bunch of cheap Strombecker track. So anyway, bought the Strombecker track. It came in a large box, and I built a huge 2-lane 100-foot track and tried it out for the first time, and didn't work very good. Connectivity issues. And I'm looking at this darn thing and I'm going, oh man, am I going to solder every connection, or what am I going to do? So what I did was I pitched it, gave the track to another friend that was looking for Strombecker track. And then at the same time, that same hobby shop was getting rid of these Moto GP sets, or Moto GT. I can't remember. They're the motorcycle sets. And it was the largest set at the time that Skeletric made, around 25, 30 feet of track in it. It's a big set, and they're blowing them out for $150 each. So I bought 4 or 5 of those, and then I proceeded to make a new 4-lane track out of Skeletric. And that's how I started with slot cars, and then raced in Calgary for a while. And then in 2007, I moved out to Kelowna, British Columbia, where I'm at now, and did some searching. Didn't know if anyone raced out here, and they did. There was a couple, 2 or 3 tracks out here, but they were digital, and I never seen digital before. And I went over to their clubs and to their homes and checked it out, and I thought it was neat. I chipped 15 of my cars, and started racing them with them. But then I'm not sure what digital was like back then compared to now, but back in 2007, 2008, it seemed really glitchy. These guys had a couple mods done on their power bases, Simple H mod, and there's some other mod they had done. So they had good power, but there's glitches. Like all of a sudden your car might not change lanes anymore, or it might start changing lanes at random, or you might not make a pit stop and your car was black flagged. And so it caused some issues for some people, especially the more competitive guys, especially when they got black flagged. So then that's when I started building my track, and I thought, well, I'm just going to build my analog track. So I built another Skeletric 4-lane track out there in 2008. And they came over for a race once I was all done building. And after the first race, the one digital guy said, I'm ripping apart my digital track, and I'm building an analog track. So he built actually a 3-lane Skeletric track. He cut the second track to make a 3-lane. And then we raced like that for a while, and slowly the other guys converted to analog as well. We did enjoy digital, all the lane changing, pit stops, but it's just too glitchy for us. So in 2011, we all started building wood tracks, and I'm on my second wood track in my home now. And we have 8 wood tracks here in Kelowna. And we race usually on Sundays, but with the pandemic, we haven't been racing at all. Just hosting some proxy races here and there, and that's about it.
Well, cool. Thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully you can come back on a regular basis. Digital has moved on. It's not nearly as glitchy as it was.
Yeah.
I remember some of those times, and I pushed through it. I'm still a digital guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember those frustrations from 10 years ago. Let's be fair, it's been a while. So, but yeah, I love digital and analog. Digital's better for anybody who's thinking about digital and just got freaked out by that. Not like it used to be, but with any technology, there will be a glitch every now and then. To be fair, I've driven on plenty of analog tracks that have the occasional glitch. So, but again, thank you very much for joining us. And it looks like Garth was working on things. His camera is showing us a nice blue screen. Garth, do you want to give it another try with us? You're currently muted. There you go. Thought I heard something. All right, might have to do some offline work with Garth to get him working on audio, but it seems he can hear us, so that's a good thing. At least he's participating. Garth, you can use the chat feature if you want to ask a question or put in some information later when we're chatting about various things. John, are you ready to show us a picture?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. Okay, so let me just, I guess I have to share my screen here, right? Okay, and oh, hang on, wheels, here we go. All right, here we go. So that's what they look like. And there's a smaller internal dimension and a larger one.
You might need to share a different screen because right now we're seeing your file explorer with the
Oh,
pictures.
oh, that's weird. Okay, so sorry. Oh, hang on. Let me just stop sharing here. So sorry.
That's
Let me
okay.
try that. Take two, everybody.
Make sure the picture's open in your viewer and then share the viewer.
Ah, okay, there you go. Let's try this then. And now I'll try and share screen. Oh, there's Phil. Okay, you're in. Here we go. And share. How's that?
There we go.
Yay! So that's what the wheels look like.
Looks good. Are they both resin or is that an aluminum and a resin?
No, they're both resin. And I tint the resin with a little bit of well, black, really, very little black, so it gets gray, so I can see that the cast has gone well. Here's let's just see if I can get to the next picture here. There we go. So there's the set screw.
You could probably also
And,
a little bit.
sorry, say again. I'm so sorry.
Probably zoom in a little bit. Click the little magnifier with the plus next to it. And
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Hang on. Oh, hang on. Let me just try and. Is that better?
here we go.
So you can see this, and it's a grub screw.
Mhm.
I think it's a 540 grub screw. And
Okay.
then that's what they look like when they're done up. That's what I've done for the Porsche.
And that's with the inserts.
That's with the inserts, yeah. And they go around the track. Well, again, to Chris's point, I don't know how well they would fare in racing, but for my purposes, they do really well. And I imagine for racing for front wheels, they might work quite well.
What kind of pricing were you thinking?
Good question. I mean, the most expensive part of the darn thing is the grub screw.
I mean,
I couldn't see any more than, like maybe, $2 a wheel. I mean, is that fair? Like $8 with the grub screws, like eight for 4.
I mean, it sounds fair to me, but I don't.
That's good.
At least you can try it and see if they're any good. And I guess, if they are good, lie, because the price will go up.
Hey, demand, right?
Yeah, no, I honestly, because we have so much fun with them, and that's what Emma uses for her cars, and they perform quite well. Touch wood, we haven't had any complaints, but most of the folks that she sells to, I think they end up on shelves more than, and they go around the track just for fun. But the tires are, by the way, those tires are 40 shore urethane copies of the Ninko Classics, and they do really, really well.
40.
As well.
Wow.
40 shore, yeah.
Awesome. Any more information from John or any more questions for John about the wheels?
How long will they last? Will they stand up to a wood track?
Yeah. I've driven them on friends' wood track. I mean, honestly, aluminums are the best, but they stand up quite well. They don't chatter very much. And I certainly didn't get asked to leave, which was it's always a good sign.
Maybe true. Like if you put the axle and then put that down on your truer, could you true the wheels?
Right. And they are fairly true. It's the tires that sometimes are a little, but again, I true them up a little bit. You can see on the rears of even this Porsche that you can see that they've been trued up a wee bit.
The only thing you'd want to do, Paul, if you want to try some for wood track racing, you really need to drill a small hole in the tire to access the grub screw.
Yeah,
it's an inboard mounted grub screw. So truing tires and taking them off and then putting them back on sort of defeats the whole purpose. So, and there's nothing wrong with drilling a small hole in the tire all the way through. Zero, nothing.
I had to do that on my nono slots.
Yeah.
It's that they're the same. You have to drill a hole in the tire. I had to mark the tire to remember where it was, then drill a little hole to do it. But yeah, I like them.
Yeah, and to Chris's point, if you take a look at this image, if you can see it, you don't have to drill a very large hole. It's almost like a little punch or something to get the Allen key in to secure the wheel. And again, less is more, to Chris's earlier point, where you don't really want to scrunch it down too much. You just want to have it nice and firm and tight, and it works quite well.
I like them.
Slothead has a question for you, John. He asks, how did you design them to match a given tire?
Oh, actually, well, you know what they are? They really are. I'll be totally honest. I love those BWA wheels, and they stopped being available, so I cast them, and that's why they work so well. That's they were so well made and so wonderful. And honestly, we made molds of them, and they work very, very well. Ironically, these resin ones are slightly lighter, if that makes any difference. But I mean, the best were the BWAs, but you can't get them anymore. So this is really what we've done. We've made a copy of them. They work really, really well.
Well, just for everyone's information, actually, you can buy BWA clones. There's a guy in England, Colin Spark at RS Slot Racing. He used to be the European distributor for BWA wheels and inserts. And when Al decided to fold up his tent, Colin Spark, there was some conversations involved. Anyway, it worked out that Colin Spark took a few of his last stocks and then sourced a local supplier in the UK. And he made a couple of tiny improvements to them. So that design, shape, size of wheel is available from RS Slot Racing in the UK. And Colin's a really good guy to deal with.
Oh, there you go. See, and you're closer than we are.
Yeah.
Well,
I
and
know him as well.
He also makes some very, very, really cool 10-inch wheels for anybody who wants to do minis. And they come with tires and mini lights as well.
Mini lights, beautiful.
Very cool.
There you go. I just put myself out of business. Perfect.
No, you ain't.
It's good to have options.
Absolutely. You know what? Aluminum, they're especially if you're using them for racing, they're just the best. And these are, again, they're for our track and our purposes, they work really, really well. But as far as cost is concerned, I mean, as I said, the most expensive things with these wheels are the darn grub screws that I had to source from, I think Brafasco, which I know I should not have done that. And probably get them cheaper online somewhere, but oh well.
Well, thank you very much for the additional information.
My pleasure.
It seems that plugging is over and done with for now. We'll move on to show and tell. And Petrucci had a new car he wanted to show. We'll get to him, and then we'll. Russ, did you have something about plugging or John's thing?
I just had a real quick question for CGY Racer.
Go ahead.
And the question is, so you went and built your wood track. Are you still running digital or are you analog now?
No, we've been analog for about 10 years now. So I know digital is awesome, and I know it's a lot better than it was when we first started. So I don't see.
Just curious. I mean, I'm analog magnetless myself, so yeah. I just wondered.
Okay, more important question: Canucks or Flames?
Oilers.
Perfect answer.
I bet you tell everybody that.
All right, so let's go ahead and do our show and tell. Mr. Petrucci, the floor is yours. You're muted, by the way. There you go.
There we go. I'm gonna get you. How's that? Can you see it?
Yeah, what is it?
It's a polycar.
Hold it up in front of your face. There you go.
Oh no, I think I got too much light on here.
Is that their modern F1?
Yes, a modern F1. Yeah, it comes with an extra chassis. Little, you got to put it together. It come tonight, so I haven't had a chance to do anything with it.
Oh, is it like a kit? Yeah, the white kit. So you got to paint it and everything?
No, it's a silver.
Oh, it's silver.
Yeah.
Yeah, a bit too much light.
There's 5 colours. There's red, white, black, and blue, and silver.
Okay. So it's painted in a plain color.
Yeah. I've got all 5 of them. That's okay for club racing.
Does it have a rear wing?
Yes, it's all, you got to put it all together. The rear wing's there.
The story, John, is they're using their existing polycar boxes, and because the 2020 and very recent F1 cars are so long, with the wing on, it wouldn't fit in their existing boxes. So they had to take the wing off and ship them that way.
But hey, at least the wing doesn't break during shipping.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That's a good idea.
Yeah, it barely fits on the plinth without the wings. Well, thank you. Anything else you want to share or talk about?
Have you tried them yet?
No, not yet. No, it comes tonight, so I haven't had a chance to put it together.
We'll have to have you put off later when you get it all put together next time.
It's a job tomorrow.
All right. For next week, you'll show off the finished car.
Probably.
Anybody else got any show and tell they want to share?
Well, go ahead, Paul.
Go ahead, Paul.
Is up.
Oh.
Oh, Sunoco.
Uh-oh.
Is that the NSR?
Yeah.
Nice. You run it yet?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like an NSR, doesn't it?
I had to go and get another one.
Uh-oh. Shop Queen NSR.
One to keep and one to race. But I think it'll look nice with the Carrera 91730. I think that would look nice together with that. Hopefully I've been a good boy. I did drop enough hints.
I should find out in a couple of days. That's a beautiful car.
I
Next,
don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
That's on the track.
Wow. Is that your track?
Yeah, I've been putting more scenery on it.
Oh, well, at some point we need a track tour.
I don't know if it's any good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can see it. Do you have that on your computer?
It's gone mad.
Do you have that picture on your computer anywhere?
No, it's on my phone. That's the only one. I took a load of photographs and I plastered it all over Facebook, and it's just gone mental. Even the missus says that looks so realistic. If I didn't have the other slot color or the guides showing up on the track, it looks real.
Hey, can you pull a copy of that photo off your Facebook page and share it out to us?
If you
How
want,
do I do that?
you don't even have. You can literally just go to Facebook on your computer and find your post, and then share your browser. But if you want, you can mess around with that, and we'll talk about other things.
Yeah. All right.
You also have any?
Do I lose the meeting then if I do that?
Nope.
No.
Meeting will keep going. You can go to any other window on your computer. The meeting will keep going.
Yep. Just reduce the meeting window, and you'll have space on your desktop or whatever to do whatever you need to do.
Don't even have
I'll have a dig.
Good luck.
If I'm not back, I've got lost.
still hear us. You don't even have to see us. You can just switch to the window. You can still listen in and know what we're talking about.
Yep.
You don't have to see us.
You just look at the bottom of your screen. If you're in Windows 10, you'll see the little zoom icon. You can always come back by just clicking the zoom icon.
All right.
So I was gonna just make some comments, guys, and I'm kind of an abrasive personality. I work really hard to not be unlikable during these video chats, but I got these from Scalextric. I'm sure you guys have all, seen them on Scalextric's website. And I make it a personal policy, and they're gorgeous looking cars. I don't know how well. Well, yeah, it's a Scalextric car. The wing will be broken in a minute anyway. But, the cars are beautifully modeled.
We lose Phil. Right in the middle of talking. 5, 4, 3, 2.
Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah, I think he's gone for a little bit. We'll have to swing back around to Phil. Does anybody have anything else they want to show and tell while we're waiting for Phil to come back?
I hope that Mustang didn't hit anything that was really essential to his casting.
It landed on his keyboard and logged him off the chat.
Oh.
That was Scott Maxwell's Mustang that he dropped too.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I noticed that.
Oh, there he is. All right, try again, Phil. You're muted.
Okay, so I make it a personal policy that when I purchase, a Scalextric slot car, I buy at least 2 of every new tool car that they produce. And I do that so I have one I can run and play with, and one that's sitting around. If it turns out to be a great car, I might even keep it up on the shelf in the box. If it turns out to be not so great a car, then I hope that some joker that comes to my house goes, man, that's a really cool looking car. And I'll say, well, that car is really bad, but it is really cool.
Oh, no. Oh, man.
It just figures he's the IT guy, right?
Maybe just leave your video off because you keep your internet apparently doesn't like both video and audio or something, Phil. I don't know what's going on. So you have 2 cars and you run one and you leave one aside just in case. And then what?
We're reconnecting him. Here
Yeah. Oh, he's going with his phone. There we go. You're muted on your phone, Phil. We can see you talking, but we can't hear you. There you
Sorry,
go.
guys. I have 4 displays on my work computer, and I have 3 of them doing work, and 1 of them doing Zoom, 1 of them doing a Windows Teams chat at work. So I think I just have the machine doing too much. So I just go to my phone. But anyway, I buy 2 of each, and I keep 1 around. Someone might decide it looks really cool. I determine it's a shelf queen or something. We're going to race in a very slow pace, and everyone's going to get their slow pace car. That's the new Scalextric Mustang GT4. It's pretty bad. It's real top heavy. My track is a plastic track. It's Scalextric Sport. It's 4 lanes. It does digital or analog. And most of the cars that I run are magnet out of the box. I'm really looking for a great out of the box experience, which I have yet to get from Scalextric. They are determined to put horrible tires on their cars these days. And it seems that a few of the new tool cars that have come out are top heavy. And even when you try to race them with low or no magnet, the heaviness of the car tells me that I'm going to be buying a lot of Professor Motor, sticky sided lead plates to put in the bottom of the chassis, even to go to keep the thing from flipping over. They're just out of balance, but they're beautiful cars. I've done a lot of tuning on them. I spent about 4 hours on one car, and it started out at 13.5 seconds around my 100-foot lap. I got it down to about 8.2 seconds. But if I compare that to something like a BMW Z4 from Scalextric, if I tune that the same way with basically the same magnet downforce and everything, that'll be like a 5.6 second lap. So you just get an idea of the difference in the cars. And different classes of cars, we all know, have different lap speeds, but I think the Scale Electric Mustang is a great looking car. If you had 2 more liveries and you could, or you paint a couple of them, so you're essentially running an IROC race, be great to have. But and I don't want to poo-poo the car. I have 4 of them. I have 1 of each livery to run and 2 that'll be in the box. It'll look great because I really like that Ford Mustang GT4 and the way it looks. And so that's kind of the deal. But I just thought I'd throw that out. Conversely, I also got the new Aston Martin in. Man, that thing just, it's heavy. It's about 84 grams out of the box. But I'll tell you what, it's low and it doesn't roll over like the Mustang. It sticks in the corners pretty good. Even with stock tires, which are kind of real slippery, it's pretty rough. I did manage to take 2.5 seconds out of the lap time on the Mustangs by sanding the tire, roughing them up a little bit. I went from about 13.5 seconds, and I got it down to about, well, I actually got it down from 13.48 to 11.04, so almost 2.5 seconds. But the Aston Martin, Mike, you were getting ready to hold that up. I'll just hand it off to you and let you talk about that Aston Martin. Go ahead, bud.
Yeah, I just got it. It's an inline, and it runs pretty well. I have to say that I'm pretty satisfied with it. I put Paul gauge tires on it, and just a touch more magnet, and it runs pretty close to my other Aston Martins, which are sidewinders and are really fast. So yeah, I'm looking forward to racing it with my buddy and seeing how it is. The other one I've gotten is the cohort of Paul's, and his is next on my list because I want to get 3 of them. I've got a couple buddies that I race every once in a while, and if I have 3 cars, all 3 of us can race. So, but yeah, I like the Aston a lot. I'm not so thrilled with the matte finish paint, but other than that, it seems like a good car.
Yeah, that paint's a little dull, but the car is a nice car.
Yes.
I hope they do a lot of liveries in that car.
There's a little bit of a story behind that Mustang, Phil. That car was designed and built by Multimatic in Toronto. And when they went through the licensing agreements, Multimatic did not want Scale Electrics to slam that car down. They wanted it to look somewhat realistic. So that's why it is a little bit higher in the roll center of the car.
Yeah. The gray one that I have, I've already taken, maybe just under 1 millimeter of body height by, trimming down the mounting post inside and doing, trimming off the rocker panels and stuff. So I've done some work on it to get it a little lower, but it's going to need some real lowering to get it down to a height where it goes good. And for guys, I won't really say guys like us because I'm not a great tuner, but for the guys who really do a lot of that type of work, that's a non-issue, right? It's a joy. It's part of the hobby. But for your average person that just comes along and buys a car, takes it out of the box and wants to run, I kind of feel like Scale Electrics could have, had they tested the car on the track and said, you know what, it rolls over a lot. Let's increase the magnet on this thing, or let's get a better tire compound for these cars. I think they could do that with all their cars of late, but these Mustangs, like I said, Multimatic was right. It looks very much like the car when you watch, British GT, when you're watching them on television. They're fantastic looking cars there. They're great looking cars going around your slot car track. But if you want to tune it to run with that Aston Martin, you got your hands full, whether you think of them as GT4s or what have you. That Aston Martin's that's a whiz banger right there.
The Scale Electrics only make cars for 14-year-olds, not for adults.
Yeah, I was going to say, to be fair, if you say who is the average user of a Scale Electric car, it's not us, it's not Chris, it's not me, it's not you. It's the 6 to 12-year-olds that get it under the tree and then leave it, 5 days later because they're playing Xbox. But I can't agree. It's not like it would be hard for them to make some subtle changes. But Chris made a great point that Smokey didn't want it slammed. They could have, but he said no. So it's a tall car, and it's gonna roll. You put better tires on it, it's gonna roll more easily.
It's gonna roll more. Yeah. You got to get some weight down low, or lower the car to start correcting that, and that's what I've done a lot of.
Well, this is actually not a bad topic for some point, down the future on one of these things. Are we racing slot cars or are we racing model cars? And should a Porsche 356 go around the track as fast as a 19 or 2020 Formula One car? You can always say Scalextric should have gone the route of Thunder Slot and squashed the Mustang and widened it and lowered it and lightened it and put little tiny wheels on it with big wide tires. But are we model car racers or are we slot car racers? And
And that's basically why a lot of times when people really, really want to race that car without doing all those modifications, or at least keeping the modifications, simple and easy and whatnot, then it's a one-make race. Everybody's going to have that same model in a different livery because it's the same ride height. It's got all the same. Everybody shares the same problems. Their cars are just a different color, and then they all have to baby it around the turns.
I mean, you look at a lot of the proxies that are going on, and there's a Trans Am 2-liter proxy, and everybody cottons on to the fact that you've got to run a Porsche 915 or 1914-6 because it's low and wide and yada 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 yada. So yes, you do end up with it's not the Trans Am under 2-liter proxy race; it's the Porsche 914-6 proxy race. So it's tough. It's a slippery road and all the rest of the stuff. And one other thing for Phil, if you want to make your car go fast, do not add weight to it. Take weight out of it.
Weight's a double-edged sword. It's lower the center of gravity, but then you've got more weight to push and more weight to slow down.
Well, if you're running a car with a magnet, and your car weighs 100 grams and the magnet will hold 100 grams, that's one thing. You start adding weight, the magnet attraction hasn't changed, but you're adding more weight to the car, which makes the work of the magnet a lot worse. I mean, it's perfect evidence for that. If you want your Mustang to go fast, take the body off and run it around, see how it goes then. So
I mean, I've done all those things, and I've on the gray car, I've gone so far is to take a Dremel and haul out the upper regions of the body and roof to reduce the high up weight. But rest assured, guys, if you're trying to get this particular car to do anything where you think it could get anywhere close to, say, running with that Aston Martin or other marks of similar breed and ilk from Scalextric, my opinion is they did a beautiful job modeling this car, but in this case, you're really running cars around the track as good-looking models. And I happen to be here in Southwest Michigan in the United States, and what's depicted as the world's largest historical automobile museum, the Gilmore Car Museum, is right here close to my house. Well, 30 miles from my house, but it's basically the other side of a town on the edge of the county. And we have a track there that we run. There's a club there, and most of the cars that are run there are Scalextric. And that was by design to try to keep the costs down and so forth. And all of us have slotted and racer sideways cars and thunder slots. And I've got all that stuff. But when a consumer, let's take that 14-year-old, let's take that person who just goes to the hobby store and buys a ready to run car. My opinion is when a manufacturer makes a ready to run car, there's no excuse for that car not doing well on that manufacturer's track, or similarly to other cars that manufacturer is putting out. If they're trying to maintain an out-of-box experience that causes a consumer to say, I did well. It's not my greatest car, but I bought a car that's good enough So I'm satisfied with it. So I want to go buy another car from this manufacturer, and I want to stay in slot cars. I think that experience is more valid for a 14-year-old than it is for one of us guys who have money and incomes and the ability to decide where we're going to budget our money. Because a parent buying that thing for a kid, or a kid saving up their hard-earned dollars to go get one, should not be in a position where it's a great disappointment to put the car on the track and discover that it rolls over in every corner and it's fishtailing wildly and just crashes and doesn't cut the mustard at all. And that's whether I'm in the living room with a little test track, or I set up my Sunset Speedway upstairs in the living room, or whether I'm down here on what I'll call my big track, which is, some of you guys have seen the picture. It's not really that big, but it's.
I get what
Anyway,
you're
that's my little thing. So I think there is a topic here, maybe for a future one, Greg. But I don't want to beat the horse. I'm giving up the microphone.
okay.
Have you ever balanced your car out?
What?
Has he ever balanced his car?
Your balance? Oh, you like balance on
Yeah,
four?
like with the balancer.
I think that's not even going to matter. I mean, basically what he's saying that you should be able to buy pretty much any car from the same manufacturer and have
Yeah, I understand that, but
experience. He's not saying that it can't be tuned. It can be with a lot of work. And I get what you're saying, Phil, and I can't disagree per se. I think that's not a bad goal, but what the manufacturer would end up having is a line of cars that are way out of scale for each other.
Yeah. I'm not saying change the scale, but I think there's things you could do that are.
No, because physics is physics. You can't make a narrow, tall car perform the same as a short, wide car. You throw a bunch of extra magnets in there, and it's going to have too much drag. You throw a bunch of extra weight in there, and it's going to have too much inertia. You cannot change the laws of physics.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying, and that's why I think to encourage that thing, maybe Skylectric and other companies can say, these cars race good with these cars, and these cars race
yeah.
stuff like that. But don't put a Formula One car next to a Mustang and expect to get the same experience.
No, you're not going to get the same thing. We have 37 classes of cars in our club for that very reason. So I get all the physics, and I'm a technologist, and I've taken physics courses and done things, so I understand that stuff.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, when manufacturers put cars out, something as simple, like if you put some sills on this, some silicone tires on this car, it will still roll over, but it doesn't roll over quite as bad, believe it or not, for one reason. And the one reason is because the thing's not fishtailing all the way out to the full range of motion of the guide blade, hitting the guide blade stop, and then that abrupt, hit against the guide blade at 22% of throttle in a corner that every other car will take at 44%, that's a problem. I'm not talking about making cars all the same. I'm not talking about the same performance envelope for every class of car, every car that's made. I'm talking about manufacturing cars or marketing cars and saying, you know what? If it is abysmal in comparison to everything else that we're putting out here, then we need to look at what could we do that's simple stuff. And some of it is simple stuff like, this thing comes in at, when I weigh the gray car, it weighs about 84 grams, and it has 84 grams of magnet. And when I put on a magnet marshal, and when I pick that car up and put the next car down, it's an Aston Martin, and it weighs 82 grams, but it's got 120 grams of magnet, that says something, right? So your consumer is getting a different experience for that reason. And those are kind of the things where I just look at, those are quality control and or experience control that the marketeers could address.
So we'll use that specific example in that, regardless of whether or not those cars should have run together on the same track in real life in the same class and stuff like that. and this goes back to the whole licensing thing with Smokey not wanting it slammed
Yeah.
down. They could have done that, except Smokey didn't want the cars to be slammed down. And
Yeah.
obviously, you know, the distance between the track and the magnet is
Oh, yeah, without question.
so a taller car. So they literally, legally, if they wanted to keep that license, could not have done that. Could they do? I mean, sure, you know, that's out there, but this also goes back to them being a toy company. They really are a toy company. They've done a
Yeah.
lot of things to appeal to the collector market and the racer market and the hobbyist market and stuff like that. And they're kind of talking to us and working with us and doing things like standardizing their wheels and stuff like that, so you can use standard tires and, you know, a variety of other things that they've kind of improved on over the years. But when it comes down to it, they're still a toy manufacturer. They're not going to put that much effort, because effort is money, etc.
Yeah.
They're into their cars. You're talking about Slot It and NSR and Thunder Slot and you know, all the various other companies that do those things in order to try to make sure that the discerning customer is gonna say, yes, I'm confident that when I buy this car from the same manufacturer, I'll be able to run it next to the other car from the same manufacturer. Scalextric, Carrera, Ninco, you know, they don't care that much. So it's barking up. It's a lost cause. If you want to go chasing that goose, feel free. I'm not.
No, we don't need, you know, I guess I'll leave it at after toys, you know, and being a toy maker, which I look at every slot car company. As far as I'm concerned, they're all toy companies. You know, my Slottits are no more, you know, or they're great and they have great tunability and there's lots of parts and everything, but it's a toy car. I can't get in and go drive around, you know, I'm not going to the track in the, you know, 650 horsepower Mazda Miata, you know, type of car. This is a toy car. But for me, I still look at the manufacturers and ask them, you know, hey, do you want to grow your market or keep it alive, or are you just riding this horse until all of us old guys are gone? I think that's kind of the deal. Yeah.
The difference is in what each individual company has a different target market.
Yeah.
I don't think you guys are that old.
Yeah, we're not that old. I mean, you can talk about yourself, but I'm only almost 50. But yeah, I mean, yeah, they all want the bigger market. Obviously, every company would want big market, but Scalextric is the kids. That Christmas is where they make their money, you know, just like most of them do. But you know, smaller companies like Slot It, you know, like we've talked about before, you know, 500 cars is a good run for a lot of these manufacturers.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's an okay run for Scalextric too, but I imagine that when Christmas rolls around, they're churning out quite a few. Scott, did you want to
know? It better be.
It comes down to price pointing. What are you going to sell your product at? Scalextric is price pointing at $45 in the US market. Slotted is what, 75 or 80? I don't know. I haven't bought a slotted car in 150 years, so I'm not sure. But you see like these NSRs and stuff, they're 100, 150, $200, right?
Yeah.
You know, for that difference, you've got Mercedes versus Toyota. Toyota builds a decent product, but the fit, finish, and the niceties of the Mercedes, you know, aren't there, because you're talking a $30,000 or $40,000 car versus a $70,000 or $80,000 car. You know, there are going to be qualitative differences between the two.
Yeah, I don't think Phil would deny that.
Greg, I can't get the pictures up. I found them on Facebook, but I can't. I'm no clue how to get them onto here.
Okay.
I've got a little teaser for you.
Okay, let me highlight you.
Let's just get a look at that.
Oh yeah, I got one of those. Are you doing something to it?
This is the Sunoco one I'm doing. I'm just waiting on the numbers, and then I'll finish building it.
That looks like the sideways one.
It is the sideways one. It's the sideways Toyota.
Okay, so the one I have is the Mustang. You got the
I copied the Mustang.
Okay. That's what I was wondering.
And I've also done,
sideways
I've got the Capri as well. So I want to paint the Capri up as, because the sideways, the Sonico Capri is absolutely silly money to buy now. But that's a little.
Paul,
Very nice.
there you go. There's the Capri.
Oh. My address is 29 Lower Foxmore.
I won this one. Come on. Yeah, this was from a,
put it back up again a minute.
sure.
Tilt it a minute so I can see the roof.
Take a screenshot.
No, because they've done two versions of that, and it's two different drivers. One is Mark Donoghue, and I can't think who the other one is.
This was actually a custom car that was built for the Racer National Series that we did in 2013. The names that are on top of this particular car are actually local racers, although one of them is actually Mike Stott out of Cloverleaf. The fellow that's done these cars, Rich, part of his sense of humor with all these cars is the various racers that have participated in the racers get to have their names on the cars.
That's super.
Is he still doing them?
Well, he hasn't done any of the custom cars because the expense of doing it is out of this world.
I know.
He's this series was a run of 200, and he just about breaks even with what he sells them for. So, but
well, if he ever knocks another lot out, let us know.
He's probably still got some of these in stock, but the price goes up. He did the first one we did was a Racer Resin series, which he did a Ferrari 312P, and that car is like $1,600 for a resin car, but the car is gorgeous.
Yeah. But no, that is the one on the hit list at the moment. But I managed to get out. Well, I showed you last time, didn't I? The NSR 917.
No, actually, I think I showed that one, but yeah. Yeah, I know you talked about it. And I said you beat this car.
Yeah. Well, that's it for me. I'm not in the wheel business anymore. I got to start building cars.
Hey, John, you better watch yourself. Your daughter already builds cars. What kind of competitor are you trying to be?
That's the NSR white kit.
Oh, hold on. Oh,
that's an NSR white test one.
Okay, my address is 621.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, right? If you ever want one painted, just send it over. I'll do it for you.
I've had that done. I've done that.
I don't mind. It's a hobby. You know, I like it.
Looks like you do a great job too. I might hit you up on that.
Well, anytime.
Awesome.
So I take it I take it there are some real Mark Donoghue fans on in this group.
I've actually joined Mark Donoghue on Facebook. It's a special page, and I showed all my. Oh God, look, that's on my hit list.
I've got one of those too.
Mark Donoghue.
But do you remember the picture I posted, Greg, with all the cars in front of my driver's rostrum on the track?
Oh yeah.
I got 140 odd likes so far on the Mark Donoghue page. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. Fantastic. Anybody else have any show and tell they want to do? I've got a topic we can hit.
Well, I was going to show that one I just put up there, but I think now you've seen it.
Looks like
this just came off 3D printed. I got it done a couple hours ago.
That's what I was going to ask.
Whoa,
nice print.
That's printed?
That is gorgeous.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that one's done, and I'm working on a Lola.
Very nice.
So those are the 3D printed cars this week, and then I'll build another one of them.
You're knocking them out, dude.
Yep.
You spray the blue first, and then
there's the third one.
Those, Steve, those prints are so nice.
They are coming out nice. This came out very nice. Built the model, the CAD
Oh,
work
that's
was
right.
done by a guy. CAD work was done by a guy in Ukraine, and he's very good. So I've hooked up into him to build stuff. So he's building some of the dream cars I've wanted 3D printed. He's doing a early Scarab next, and then a Lola 40.
boy.
And
Steve, can you show us the one with the supports inside it still, please?
sure,
I want to see from the underneath.
that was testing yellow.
Oh, you've broken some of them out already, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this one was too heavy, so I quit and redid it.
Uh,
You see the walls are too thick.
yeah.
So this was kind of
That's
a
good.
test one.
Okay.
What are you
Thank you.
looking for?
No, just to see how you do it.
Okay,
Yeah.
What printer is
And then
that?
you print on a raft as well, or do you just print straight on
straight on.
with the supports?
Yeah, I set them in like this way on the
Yeah.
bed, not this
Right.
way,
So-
on the bed.
So sorry, I'm such a neophyte when it comes to 3D printing, but you have to have supports underneath?
Well, the printer can't print air.
Okay, so it actually, I got it. So it doesn't go around and build up. It actually.
No, remember, it's
It
going
does.
lateral, working its way up. So it's got to have something to put the top onto, you know, because
Okay.
it's building its way up.
Right.
That's what the supports are.
So what
The
you've
sides-
really
Sides
created
are
is almost
easy,
the
but it's
equivalent
the
of
flat
sprue
surfaces
then,
that
right?
are the problem.
I'm sorry.
Pardon?
You've almost created the equivalent of sprue in an injection molded process kind of thing.
Yeah,
Kind of. That's not far off. What's the other one? Just finishing up on a Bennett, real rare Can-Am car.
Nice.
So that's kind of fun. He had the biggest wing in the free world on it. He did. And I think that's lately. The motor in the Lola came out nice. I should send that in to you guys that need motors.
Yeah, that's
the-
awesome.
Yeah, the detail on it, the motor is fantastic. You know, a separate file.
And is that a separate file?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You want to play with that?
Yeah, is it a Ford or is it a Chevy motor? Ford motor.
Ford.
Yeah.
Afraid it's a Ford.
Yeah, I'm looking for a Chevy one.
Which end's the
Yeah, I
distributor
can't
at?
find a Chevy big block yet that's got all the detail I want.
How
A
much
lot of-
sanding, Steve, how much sanding do you find you need to do on these? Or are you
Depends
just
on
gonna
the-
use-
You know what? The sanding is directly proportional to how good the CAD guy is. This CAD guy is good for this one. You could almost just prime it. I haven't touched it.
Okay,
Can you see this fairly well?
It's beautiful.
reasonably so. So just a
Okay.
little bit of high build primer and you're smooth.
Yeah, I mean, you'd go over this a little bit with, quick with 200 and maybe quick with 400, but I mean, it wouldn't take you 20 minutes.
Sure.
So that came out wonderful. This CAD car here, this Lola, you can't really see it though. It looks,
No.
you can see on the fender maybe that it's a little rough, not as
Yeah.
smooth.
Yep. It's
Okay,
almost
so that-
faceted.
Correct. So this one was done by a CAD guy that, does it more as a hobby.
Okay.
There's no comparison. I mean, there's no comparison in the two models from where I'm sitting.
Yeah, but
So
it's-
this will take about a half hour to diddle with before you prime it.
But it's doable. I mean, it's not a horrible project at all.
Oh, no, this car, I built a lot of resin cars before I got into the 3D printing, and most of them are pretty much the same thing as when you got a resin car. The amount of work's about exactly the same. Maybe the exception is Renick's stuff, was so smooth, but most of the resin cars, you sand it and you prime it and then you do a little wet and dry or whatever before you shoot it. Not much different.
Okay.
You
No,
know,
awesome.
So Steve, how do you remove the interior build structure? Like
That,
do you use a
that
Dremel
stuff you
tool
want to
or-
get out,
Yeah,
just like this.
that's
There
it.
is. That's it.
Wow.
Yeah, it was
Depending on
just like that. You just,
That's
It's
just
not
like a
always
trip.
quite like that.
Well, I was gonna say, that's like a trip to the dentist.
Well, that's
You hear
a matter of getting your
Just
X
move it.
dimension correct or your separation dimension correct.
Yeah, so if you have a
That's it.
you have a well-tuned printer that is tuned specifically for the filament that you're printing and the type of supporting you're doing, the supports could be as easy to pull off with your fingers, just pop it off. And
Yep.
so tightly welded on that you're yanking it off with pliers and scraping at it with a knife.
True.
So Steve, to your earlier point, it really depends on how that file is built then.
It depends on how good the file is, how smooth the cat is.
And what your settings are.
Your settings for your slicer, for how thin or thick your layers are, and your settings for your slicer for how well the supports are going to do their job, as well as how well the supports are going to come away once they've done their job. And all of that kind of comes into play, that they all interact with one another. So it's Steve, obviously, he's been doing it for a while. He knows his printer, he knows his slicer, he knows his materials, he knows his models. He can really crank out the good stuff.
I was going to say it's very similar to creating if you want to create a mold and finding out where the flow points are so you don't get any air.
That's true.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah, and supports can be, they're not required all the time. For most filament printing and even resin printing, there's a certain limit to how much of an overhang can exist prior to it needing support. The more
usually about 45 degrees.
Usually about 45 degrees. Yeah, the closer to horizontal, the more support it's going to need. You can't print something up here and then something needs to be printed over here. It just have it start in midair, build up where it's printed on, and then you can bridge without support to a certain extent. So if you've got two things here, and then you're going to have something that goes across them both, you can print without support in the middle to a certain extent. Then sometimes the bridges sag a little bit, and so you either got more cleanup to do, or you want to go ahead and add supports or whatever. But a lot of design work for 3D printing purposes focuses on designing the model so that you don't need supports at all, or so you only need very minimal supports. As a lot of times we'll have models that were it's just a model. It's a model of the thing. The method of production was not considered whatsoever. And so you end up having to just cover your bed with supports. Wherever that thing is going to be has to be supported, because there are no flat surfaces to rest on the bed. There are no good angles to be unsupported. Car models are a great example, because you might have some flat sides that can be printed on the bed, and those will print just fine. But as soon as they start going out too much, like for a nose, or start coming in too much, they're going to be all droopy or whatever without supports.
So now you guys were also talking about the orientation of the print too, that you can sometimes help with the support by tilting it or inverting it or whatever it takes.
Yeah, because if you're taking a car like this, then all of the horizontal surfaces will need support. But if you're able to print it like this, those horizontal surfaces are now vertical surfaces that there's no way to support them, right? So if you can rest the car on its back and print it vertically, a lot of times you can get a better print without supports. But again, it depends on the model. There's, when you get into 3D printing, the first thing you're going to do is print a test model that's super easy to print, and then you're going to print something that's not so easy to print, and you're going to fall down a deep rabbit hole about learning how to orient your print, how to support your print, how to tune filaments, and all this stuff. I would say if you've got an ender, go to Steve. He knows his stuff.
I was going to say that I could not believe how it looked like you had like a solid honeycomb thing, and you just went, boop, and it's gone.
Yeah, now they're making, if you got it printed with two heads on it, there's support material that's water soluble. So you get done with your print, you just throw it in the sink and the supports all just dissolve.
Yeah, that can be, so my multicolor printer can do that kind of thing. So soluble filament is notoriously hard to print with. So
yep.
One of the other tricks is to use materials that are that don't adhere to one another after they've cooled down. So PLA, very common material, and PETG, also a very common material, do not bond together. You can print them and they'll be okay touching each other when they're warm, but once they've cooled off, they will not retain that bond. And so you could do PLA supports for a PETG model or vice versa, and then when you're done, it just snaps off, no tools or anything. The problem with that is that you can't have supports on inside of things. So if you have an object that is so complex it needs supports inside that you won't be able to tear out from the inside, that's when soluble material really shines, because you can just plop it into water like he said, and then just dissolve. It's basically glue. It's like white glue. It's PVA, which is what white glue is made out of, and it's printable PVA. So once it's done, you just dissolve it.
Steve, how strong are those bodies? Are they as strong as resin or stronger?
I don't know if they're any, I don't know how to word it. We print them as thin as we can, 0.6 millimeter basically is ideal. And all I can say, I never had one break. They weigh a little less than a slotted. And I've never had anything break on the three, including guides that are talked about a lot, by the way.
Yeah.
So I've never had any of them break with PLA. And this is a hard track where, with a 25-foot straight, they get rolling, on this track.
I think they even survived your drone.
A drone is another story. Here's another one that just is in process. You guys will get a kick out of it.
Oh,
Kind of a rare-
the ATS.
Yeah, the one with the big motor hanging out of it.
Yeah, and they had 13-inch wheels, I think, on the front or something, or 10, something
Yeah,
ridiculous.
Yeah, I've got the regular one.
I think they were 10.
But
Yeah, the driver's feet were like this.
no, you're thinking of a different one.
Oh, am I? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're thinking of the goofy one. You're thinking of this one.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. Yep.
That was a squirrely car.
Oh, look, and you did it. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
That's my second favorite cars.
That's one of the weirdest.
That's another one with a rear wing that was made by a caterer.
Oh, it's a monster. It's a monster. But yeah, this is it. His feet are sticking in front of the axle.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to drive it. Jackie Oliver wouldn't even drive it.
No, George Fulmer did, and then he went never again.
Exactly. I mean, just ridiculous.
Didn't Vic Elford drive it as well?
This car still exists. There's a guy in Wisconsin that he has several of the Shadows. And unknown to me, because I was with him at Elkhart Lake when he had them all over there. This was 2 years ago, not this summer, before he wrecked one. But this body that we all are familiar with, the first one, is really this. There's only one. And all they ever did was change the rear. So if you look at the front of this, it's in essence the orange body. And they just kept adding things to it and trying things before they moved on to the Mark II. So there really was only one of these in existence, even though there's about 5 iterations of it. It was kind of a fun story, and he's got them all. He shows up at the track, and he brings out, this was another weird one. This is one that had the cannon on it.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
The same body. It was just the orange one, redone. Same car. You just kept bolting things on it.
What was the idea of the cannon?
Pardon?
What was the idea of the cannon? Is it an air intake?
It squirted air into that was the air scoop, and it had fans in it.
Looks like they borrowed it off a doodlebug.
I can hardly hear you, but
Said it looks like it borrowed it off a doodlebug.
I know it's.
Yeah, that or Jerry Anderson and the Thunderbirds.
Yeah.
But anyway, so those are a few of the Shadows.
Wow.
How many Shadows do you do?
I've got them all. There were 3 DN4s made. I've got 3 of them. I've got the 2 black Mark IIs and the white Mark II, the Mark IIs with the different.
So I got to ask you, Steve, how many blowovers have you had?
How many what?
Blowovers have you had where it flips up?
Oh, like the one that did this summer? Wow. You know what? He's going to try and rebuild it.
Really?
Really?
You pretty much have to.
I mean, they're gold. I mean, there's parts of it left, of course. I mean, they wrecked that same DN4 at Long Beach, I forget how many years back it was, and rebuilt it. Bennett's brother was driving it, but this was a little more, this was a little more serious.
Yeah, that you could see he just caught some air and away he went.
No, he lost all of his downforce. He got too close on the end of the straight. And no downforce, front end lifted, and once it starts to lift, it's all over.
Yeah,
You
welcome
know,
to the Can-Am Flying Club.
you know, he was a very good driver, so you know,
Bit like
he
the
didn't get.
Mercedes, isn't it? On Le Mans.
But anyway, that's what
Isn't
I've got
that
today.
at the top of the
Steve,
straight?
do you sell that?
Pardon?
Do you sell
I
that?
said- Go ahead.
Mike, go.
Okay, didn't that happen at the top of the straight? At the
Near the
top
end.
of the hill
Near the
on
end.
the straight?
After the hill, past the pits,
Right.
Oh, okay.
and then it let go just before turn one.
Hmm.
Kind of between the pits and where turn one is, as I understand it.
Yeah, this is the first year I've missed it in about 6 years.
Me too. Well, they expected such a huge turnout this year. They expected 30, 40 Can-Am cars. And because of the virus, they didn't get 30 to 40. I mean, they got really very few, you know, other than some shadows. And I kept calling and asking about the entry list. I was curious what was going to happen. I was going to try to figure out a way to do it. But when you think it through, you know, all the Can-Am cars are owned by old guys. You know, they can afford them, they can race them, and they didn't want to be in virus land. So I mean, it was tough putting together the big entry list they wanted, even though he did have the 2 DN4s there. But you notice he owns 2 of the Mark IIs, a couple of Formula One cars, owns the Mark One. You know, he didn't bring them, you know, to run. They were all prepared. They'd been busting their butt at the shop to make 6 shadows race worthy, you know, for Elkhart Lake, Road America. Anyway.
Paul, you were going to ask something?
Yeah, Steve, do you sell those bodies?
No, sir, I do not. Do you?
Have to get a print.
What printer do you print?
No, I can barely use a computer, let alone print.
Yeah.
Paul, maybe you could do it in cursive.
I can do it in Balsa.
Get into the printing and we can start to work some things out. I mean, the way printing with slot car bodies is right now, some of the guys that make them want to share them, some guys don't. Some guys they maybe will share them, but they're not so sure because they might sell them someday, and it's all over the board. But if you got a printer and print, you know, we can get you stuff. It can be done.
I think I'm going to have to get a printer.
That's true. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It'll sort out over the next couple of years. You know, somewhere in the next couple of years, there'll be Greg knows this as well as I do too, but you know, there'll be a central repository where guys can stick files there and anybody can get them that wants them, and it'll, you know, this will all sort out. But right now it's a kind of mess. It's messy. It's a hit and miss whether you're going to get a good body from a guy or not. There's a few for sale, but the ones for sale, there's nothing for sale like these stuff you really want. You know, well, there's a 2J for sale body. There's a 612 for sale body that I commissioned that's up for sale, and the Hussein's up for sale. You know, I had a guy make that, and I told him, if you make it for me, you make me the Can-Am Hussein, then you can put it up for sale, which he's done. You know, it's all over the board right now. But,
well, Steve, you were also doing a proxy, weren't you?
yes, and yeah, we have a 3D proxy going, and we've listed, I don't know how many cars that we can get files for. Just trying to move it all forward, if you will. I think this is a big part of the future of this hobby. I really do. You know, and
well, can you imagine? You don't have to depend on the mail anymore. Just email.
There is that.
I think it's a good.
There is that.
I think it's a good concept.
Except for parts.
Small parts.
You're still buying parts. and you're
Like
buying
wheels.
a lot of like
Like
wheels,
axles, gears,
you're
that
buying
kind
a
of
lot
stuff.
of parts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
They're in smaller boxes than the bigger boxes that my wife sees.
if you're into building models, which Paul, it looks like you're into doing the paint jobs at the very least, and you're familiar with that, I would say now is a perfectly good time to get into using 3D printing to enhance your slot car enjoyment, because you can get a printer for a couple $100. Steve can help you, get some nice settings going on an Ender 3 or an Ender 3 V2 or whatever, $200 filament printer you pick up.
Yep.
I would recommend the Ender. It's got a great user base, and obviously we have an Ender expert here to pick his brain on. That's 2 slot cars. That's 2 NSRs. You spend that much already, and
Yeah.
a roll of filament, a $20 roll of PLA filament. How many bodies do you think you can get out of a $20 roll, Steve? 50?
About 40 to 50.
Yeah. Isn't that ridiculous? So you could mess up a dozen times and still save money having bought the printer and a roll of filament on printing those bodies. And I would say that the reason I said now is a good time, not only because the print of a very good printer is so affordable. I mean, you've still got a learning curve to get through, and we can help you with that. Steve can help you with that. But once you get through that learning curve, it's a great printer. And as the proxy has exhibited to us, the availability of slot car bodies is only growing. It's not shrinking. I remember 2 years ago when I first started getting into printing, looking for bodies that I could print, and they just weren't any. There weren't any worth printing. And now we've got people specifically designing for 3D printing slot car bodies of these classic cars. It's only going to get better from here.
And it's not just bodies, they're chassis.
Oh, chassis.
It's everything.
Yeah, and don't forget about scenery too. So some of the scenery items are spectacular.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I gotta tell you, I'm looking at 2021. I'm this close to jumping in that. It's not a rabbit hole, man. It's the Grand Canyon.
Well, I mean, you did, Greg, you put the figures up last week. You were showing that painted figure you did, and I was looking at that, and a really nicely painted figure for guys. They're getting $12-15 for those. Your run-of-the-mill figures, they're kind of rare. You can, are $5. I've printed close to 400, 500 figures for this track, and I didn't start printing until, by the way, last January. So it's been almost a year.
Well, Steve, you've only been doing this for almost a year.
Yeah.
So how steep is the learning curve then?
Oh, to print?
Yeah.
If you bought your first file was a really good file, and you bought any of the Enders, a good example printer, and you did the default settings on the slicer, and let's say you started that print at 6 at night, you'd be sanding it at 8 in the morning when you got up.
As far as
it'd be fine. It would be just fine. And as Greg said, then you would start trying stuff, and you'd get something a little more complex and da-de-da. But you would be really happy at 8 in the morning because it would look pretty damn good, same default settings with a reasonably good file. Odds are it would turn out pretty good, assuming the printer worked okay. Then all hell kind of breaks loose. I mean, you want to do this, you want detail, you get a bad file, you want that car, you start printing figures, that's another whole world.
I was going to say, so what part of the world are you in now? You've gone to the print now. Have you gone to the file building side yet?
I have, I've tried. There's some real simple CAD programs. I'll get a file, say this, and all the cutouts aren't done in the back and the holes and all that. I can do all that in simple programs. And I've sat down and said, especially with the virus, I got time. I'm going to learn to be a CAD guy. Not going to happen. It's just not me. In my business, I had 2 CAD guys working for me and doing the animations. I figured, if they can do it, I should learn this. Didn't happen. I just don't have that kind of patience. If you're interested in doing CAD work, yeah, you could be building your own models. It'd be wonderful.
So I'm going to throw in a little bit on the learning curve in that it's really more of a learning step. And I mentioned this in the past, of course, but with any 3D printing, it's all about how well your model starts, how the first layer, as we call it, how well you have your first layer tuned, how well it's sticking to the build platform. And that's basically the number one thing that newbies need to learn and make mistakes with until they learn. So
Yep.
like Steve was saying, you get your new printer, if you just hit print on the thing, it's going to be fail city. You follow a guide on how to get your first layer just right, and your first one might be close enough to work pretty good, and you're close enough for things for the easy stuff to work just fine. But if you're not right on the money, or at least super close to right on the money for your first layer, then the more complicated things are going to fail. So the learning curve is learning step. Step one is learn what a good first layer looks and feels like, so that you can recognize whether your print is going to succeed or fail. Because once you know what a first good layer looks like, and you look at that first layer as it's printing, you're like, I'm good to go, and you can walk away. If you don't know what a good first layer looks like, and you say, oh, it's good enough to me, and walk away, you're going to come back to a blob or spaghetti. So I can share a link to, for anybody who's interested. I found a really good tutorial online that should work with any printer. But basically, it kind of guides you through the process of just printing a square and adjusting your level, which is different from printer to printer on how to adjust that first layer level. And then it shows you, how to recognize what is good or bad. If it's too high, it'll have one issue. If it's too low, it'll have another issue. Once you get it right on the money, you'll have this beautiful, smooth square of one layer thick of material. And by going through that process, you get on top of that step, and you know what your first layer looks like, and you know that your print is going to succeed. After that, it's about how does supports work and stuff like that, and that's a whole different kind of step. But once you have your first layer nailed, you can generally just hit print and know that it's going to be successful generally.
Because this combined with molding and casting, I can really see just my head explodes.
My head's exploding just trying to figure out how to work the computer to work the 3D printer.
You can open a file in a program, click a button, and then save the results to a memory card or a USB stick, and then unplug that and plug it into your printer and
so you don't, it's not connected or anything, it's just off of a...
It depends on the printer, and some printers can be connected to the computer like a regular 2D printer. Some of them will have a memory system, some of them will have wireless you can do, and it depends on the printer. But generally speaking, you're opening a model in your computer program, you're clicking slice, using their default settings, you're clicking slice, and then you're saving that or sending that to your printer, and then you go to your printer and then hit print. Or the really fancy ones, you can remotely click print. But as a beginner, you don't want to do that until you're confident in your printer's configuration.
And the name of that printer you recommend is?
The Ender 3 is a great budget printer. I started with a Prusa Mark III. It's a higher end printer. It served me well. I always recommend it, but it's, you could get 4 Ender printers for the same price as a Prusa printer. So
That's called, it's an Ender.
Ender.
E-N-D-E-R.
Yep, E-N-D-E-R. Ender. And Creality is the manufacturer. Ender 3 is the popular model. I think they're now at or something like that. As a printer manufacturer, they make a variety of printers, but you should be able to find an Ender 3 for about $200 US.
So Paul, when the large package arrives, you better make a really nice meal.
Yeah. I'm thinking on how I can get it into the house.
I mean, they're not that big. You can probably sneak it in, but you'll need a place to. They can make some noise and some fumes, so having it in a garage is.
Put it in the garage. I'll put it in the garage with the track.
There you go. What were you gonna say, Russ?
Greg, on the what would you say maintenance costs are on the printer over a year if you're printing daily?
They're pretty low, unless you have a part that fails. You know, I'll use myself as an example. When I built my printer, everything was lovely. I thought I was God. I went away, I hit print, and I came back to a blob, which is when the print detaches, sticks to the nozzle, and the nozzle keeps pumping out material, and it just kind of keeps growing and growing into a blob on your extruder. That's a very common failure for new printer owners, and that's because I thought I had good first layer, but I did not. That blob, once I managed to remove it, caused one of the wires that goes to the extruder to be damaged. And my only option was to replace that part. That part is a $10 part. And as soon as I got that part, I replaced it and my printer was fully functional again. So it depends on what you break. But if you're, once you get past the hurdle of getting it to print well, generally speaking, if you don't, have it in a harsh environment where it's going to start rusting in bad places, or you're causing problems by having things too tight or too loose in some places, generally you're going to be cranking out prints 24/7 with no additional maintenance cost. A drop of oil here and there might be a good idea, depending on what kind of mechanics your printer has.
Maybe a nozzle.
And I just bought a pack of 20 some cheap Chinese brass nozzles that are like $10 that have all sizes. So I mean, it's not that your biggest cost after the printer is material. And if you're really getting a kick out of printing, then you're gonna be like me with just stacks and stacks of different colors and material types and stuff like that. But you could literally just have, if you're printing slot car bodies or people that you're going to paint, you could just grab some $20 spool of PLA and print that till it's gone, and then order up another one. You probably maybe $20 a month for your spool if you're really cranking out the bodies and figurines.
Is that it?
That's it. Oh,
that's it.
That looks like it. Let me spotlight you here. Ender 3.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that looks like the tall version.
Yeah, does it take up a lot of space?
No, top of a desk.
No.
Bench. No, not a lot.
Wow.
I could have got that for the two prices of those two cars.
Yep. Yeah. And just a year or two ago, that wasn't even an option. The Prusa was considered an average priced printer. But then when, Creality and some other manufacturers really started jumping into the market, just like you expect any other product, the prices drop, the quality goes up, and you end up, with that, everything switches place, so you're the guy that was the cheapest or that was cheap is now expensive because he's still doing the same thing. And the guys that, that were cheap but low quality has now gotten to be good quality. What's that one, Paul?
That's
that's the Ender 6 Pro.
Is that any good?
I mean, they're all good. It depends on.
They're all good.
That's the 5 Pro. That's the one that I have.
It says silent. That's best.
Yeah.
Silent.
Yeah,
Is it delivered silently?
The new they're not entirely silent, but the new drivers are better, and they don't make as much noise when they move the nozzle, the print head around.
Yeah. So when you see a printer that says silent, it's from a company who's making printers with lower cost and quality stepper drivers and motors. The stepper motors is what controls the kinematics of the printer. And if it's not a silent stepper driver, then it's going to be going the whole time that it's printing. But if you got silent
radio,
thank you. If you got silent stepper drivers, then the kinematics of the printer will be fairly silent. The loudest sound you're going to get is from the fans that are cooling the power supply or the hot end or the part. So it's going to be fan noise, which fortunately is white noise. So generally speaking, most people can sleep with one of those in the same room or the room next door, no problem. So definitely.
I'm leaving, guys.
Steve.
My iPad's about to die.
Okay. All the best. Have a great holiday.
Yes, Dennis,
You
have a good
too.
happy
Thank
Christmas
you.
and Happy New Year.
Same to all of you.
Happy Christmas, Happy New Year.
So Paul, you're certainly on the right track. It's all in the positioning
Yeah.
and the justification.
Yeah. Hey, hon,
Right?
here's a gift certificate.
I'm gonna be really, really good and decorate a lot of the house now and see what I can get.
I'll tell you, when you email me, I'll email you some great recipes that work like a charm for me.
I'm an ex-chef, so I'm all right.
Oh, geez, whoa! Then teach me, please. I've got some deliveries coming.
Take her out and buy a new outfit and pair of shoes. She'll be happy.
There you go. So since we've only got 10 minutes left, I won't bother digging up another topic. Does anybody have anything?
Well, no, I want to ask a question. I want to get some files for printing bodies. I printed this one. Don't know if you can see it, but it didn't come out very good.
Go over to the side. There you go.
Yeah. And I printed the little man.
Oh, there you go. You print a stig.
Yeah. I stuck him on the block with a bit of Tic Tac. He looks well. But
So how much time do you think on a figure you're going to spend sanding and prepping it for primer?
Are you trying to take close-up pictures with a macro lens next to a slot car, or are you having them on the track as spectators?
Yes, spectators.
5 seconds, because you don't. They're going to pass the 5-foot rule. You know, if you're okay with it passing the 5-foot rule, then you don't have to do any sanding. Just go ahead and paint the thing. Because one of the things to remember is that most of these printers are fully capable of printing very, very thin layers. So when you think 3D printing, consumer level 3D printing, you're thinking layers, and you're going to see the layers because it's squirting out layers. So most of the time you're thinking of very low resolution or very thick layers that it's.
Okay, here we go.
You can,
All right.
you can configure your printer to do very thin layers. So mine is capable of 0.05 millimeter layers. That's 20 layers per millimeter of thickness, right? So visually, close up, you can see them. You can run your fingernail along them and it'll go zip. But from this far away, you're not really gonna see them. And if they're on your track, you're definitely not gonna see them. So you don't even have to go to that extent to get figures that will pass the 5-foot rule. So you print them at a decent resolution, maybe 0.1 or 0.15 millimeter thickness layers, slap some paint on them so they don't look like a statue, and put them on your track and you're fine. If you want to do macro photos, you know, where you're making it look like a real person against a real car, then you want to go with resin because it's the way that the layers work is much more not layery. I mean, do you want me to pop up that picture of my 2 Stig statues again?
Yeah.
Okay, give me a sec here. You have any other questions while I dig up the picture?
Dennis, do you recommend that for number 5? Oh, he's not there.
He might.
Dennis is, yeah, Dennis is here.
Oh, I didn't see it. Do you recommend that number 5?
It's more expensive than the 3, and so
It's only £100 dearer.
It does. It works a little differently in that the plate moves up and down rather than the print head moving up and down. I think so. I always felt that if you can afford it, then go for the best that you can afford. And so that's why I went with the 5 rather than the 3. And it's working fine.
Does the 5 have auto bed leveling or anything, or is it still?
No, you had to add that. I added that extra.
one of the nice things about a more expensive printer like my Prusa, or adding a bed leveling sensor to your printer, is in order for the first layer to be good everywhere, the build platform has to be absolutely perfectly flat, not level. That's a different thing, but perfectly flat. And we're talking about microns difference can result in failure versus success. And so there's two ways to fix that. You either have a big block of aluminum that's been milled to be perfectly flat and hope that it never experiences any extreme temperature changes or damage that creates any unflatness, or you have a printer that is able to compensate those tiny amounts of unflatness. So my printer has, I forget what type of sensor it is, but it's basically a proximity to metal sensor, inductive or something like that. But basically it comes down and it measures how close it is to the bed in 49 places. It does a 7x7 grids, and it does mesh bed leveling. So it computes basically the flow of that surface. And again, we're talking microns here because those make a difference at this level. And so when I hit print on my printer, the first thing it does is it warms things up because the temperature will change the shape of that bed. And then it brings the sensor down and it goes ba-da-doop, 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 ba-da-doop 49 times to make a recording of the level of the bed everywhere. And then as it's printing, I can actually watch the Z motors that turn to make it go up and down. I can watch those turn just very minutely as it's printing around on the printer, because it's compensating that whole time for that very minute change in level. So having a technology that does that can make your life a little bit easier. However, it's not mandatory. You know, like we say, the Ender 3, it's got a fairly good sized plate, fairly solid plate. It's got 4 adjustments in the corners. You do some manual adjusting of the corners and you get perfectly good prints out of the thing. So what you should be seeing right now is a picture of the lower 3/4 of 2 Stig figurines. The one on the left is the print from my filament printer, my Prusa, straight off the printer with no preparation, no cleanup. So you can see a little bit of stringing. You can kind of see the layer lines. If I zoom in, you can see a little bit more of the layer lines. Any horizontal line, that's going to be your layer line. And then this is a resin print. So this is off my SLA Elegoo Mars Pro resin printer. It has layers too, but they kind of blend together, right? So if you're doing close-up pictures, or you really want a really nice figure or car bodies, and you don't need them to be functional things quite so much, because resin doesn't rub together on things very nicely unless you pay big money for really expensive resins. You go with a resin printer. If you're okay with the 5-foot rule, you know, pick off some of the strands and paint it. This is that Stig on the left on a filament printer. You could get that off of an Ender, no problem.
Can I see the upper half?
You want to see their screwy heads?
Yeah.
So this is an example of what can happen if your first layer isn't correct. The Stig on the left, printed on my Prusa filament printer, it has removable sheets for the bed, so you can just pop a print off and slap a new sheet on. Well, minor differences in the thicknesses of those sheets affect your first layer. And I forgot to tell my printer that I changed to a different sheet before I hit print on that print. And because I thought I didn't need to do that, I didn't do that. I thought everything was fine. I hit print and I walked away. It actually did pretty good for being not the right settings for the first layer, because it got up to halfway up his helmet. Then what happened was there was too much force as the nozzle touched down to put down another layer, and not enough adhesion of the base to the print bed. And so it came loose, and the printer basically drug the figurine around in little circles as it thought it was printing the top of the helmet, and kept extruding and extruding. And eventually it dragged the whole figure off to the side, and it fell off the side of my printer because it fell off the nozzle.
So Greg, your little screw up of your alien there, what do you think the cost of that was? What are you out?
Material costs,
Yeah.
5 cents,
Yeah.
10 cents maybe. Yeah, I don't
Okay.
care.
Just curious.
And I'd have printed that again and had a fully successful print. But the only reason I printed it on my Prusa was to compare the best quality I could get from my Prusa with the normal quality I can get from my resin printer. And I don't need multiple Stig figures, so I didn't bother reprinting the Stig on my filament printer.
But if I can just say that, you know, that happens when you're resin casting as well, where you get an air bubble and the figure doesn't come out and the way it goes. But I mean, to be honest with you, you can still use the body. You just put a different head on that figure. It'll work.
Oh yeah. There's usually a way to rescue a failed print, unless it turns into a blob or spaghetti from the ground up. Then, you know, it's not hard in my slicing program to measure up to where it's failed, or the neck if I want to go to the neck, and then cut the model at that level and then print from that level up, and then stick them together, you know, with glue or a pin or, you know, whatever, and then paint it. You'd never even notice.
Can you, you know, like on, say, like if you've got other figures, can you add, take like you were saying, you can add a new head to that. Could you put, say, like figure arms from another, like another company like MRC, or say, like, you know, just hack them about and add things to them? Because I know John does it on his video, on his stuff. He can actually swap and change.
Yeah, but I actually do that physically. What you're saying is you can do it digitally and then get different figures.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can manipulate all things all over the place digitally. I mean, there's a guy on Slot Forum that has written up a very extensive and helpful guide on DAZ 3D, which is a 3D modeling program that is specifically geared for modeling human figures, you know, like for games or you know, whatever you're using the CGI model for, and then exporting that into a file that can be printed. And he shows how to put clothes on them, how to position them however you want them to be, how to change them from, you know, male or female or fat or thin or tall or short or whatever. You can create one from scratch if you wanted to. But yes, you can absolutely download multiple figures from various sources, cut in various ways, and then reattach them all electronically, and then set it up to be printed.
So Greg.
Yes, sir.
If you were to take and give one just their arms are out, sticking out by their side, would they come out like the legs did on this? Or is there an issue with doing, you know, because putting their arms like this, it's almost all solid.
Yeah, but look at right here. You see this kind of
here?
So this is an area of his arms that is at the limit of the capabilities of unsupported filament printing. I did not print this with supports. So basically his elbows and forearms are a severe overhang. And so it was not properly supported, and so it made some ugliness. That can be cleaned up, obviously. But if you have somebody with their arms out to the side, or in some way not suitable for printing without supports, you would need to add support to have those printed. And the downside of supports is that the layers that are directly on the supports tend to be uglier. They're not going to be as smooth as the top of those things are. Down here is going to be kind of lightly drooping on where the supports were, unless you go with the soluble supports thing, and then you need a much fancier printer in order to print two different materials on the same object that you're printing. But you know, you can use regular PLA, and like Steve was showing with the slot car bodies with the support, you know, support that feature and then pull the supports away, and then do a little cleanup on that side if it bothers you.
So it's almost like a parting line then when you're casting.
Very much, yeah. I would equivalent. I would compare that to flashing and other anomalies of having to do multi-part molding and stuff like that.
But to do it, you have to have the support.
Yeah, and you know, the material is cheap, you know, and before I started getting into recycling scrap material back into filament, I did everything I could to avoid supports, to avoid rafts, as they call them, which is a method for a bad printer to help a print stick to its badly manufactured bed, and supports and stuff like that. But the material is inexpensive, so it's really not an issue of cost, as to whether or not you want to add supports. If you want to make that thing succeed, go ahead and put however much support under it you feel is necessary to make sure it succeeds. And then
bear in mind, Russell, the pictures that Greg's got up here now are like 10 times the size of what they're going to be. So you look at a bad blemish on the guy's elbow, just reduce that by like 10 times. And then by the time you a couple of brush strokes with a sandpaper and put paint on that, they're going to look stunning.
Yeah, you're not going to see that stuff on your track.
Good, because I need about 300.
So, okay, I understand the support along the bottom of something. So how would you support the arms? If his arms, one of those drivers, were straight out, how do you build the support to support those arms?
That's where your slicing comes in. You're not having to build any supports. You can tell your slicing program add supports automatically wherever it thinks it's needed, and it will design the scaffolding from the bottom of the arm down to the ground.
Okay.
You don't need to add supports. You just need to tell your program that it should add supports. And this is how crazy I am into 3D printing. That's not even all my filament.
Now, Greg, I see that there are different colors. Is that different thicknesses, or is it just colors for whatever you want to print?
Just colors. Generally
okay.
speaking, your printer is only going to be able to print one thickness or diameter of filament, but I do also have different material types. Most of this is PLA. Obviously, lots of different colors. I have stuff that's especially shiny. I have stuff that changes color with temperature. I also have ABS and PETG and
Now, do you ever change color halfway through a print to get like a different effect or anything, or?
Oh yeah, that's half the reason. I have a super fancy printer that changes up to 5 different colors in the same print. Let me see if I can find a good picture of well, here's one. This is easy. Share. Come on. Share. So those are some fidget toys that I did for some people. The Superman was printed face down, and my machine printed the blue, and then it changed to red and printed the red, and then it changed to yellow and printed the yellow, and then it did the next layer on top of that, and so on and so forth. And then it basically printed blue. That's because I have a fancy machine that changes color automatically for me. However, that you can print things. A lot of models are provided in multiple pieces, so you can print, the body in this color and then the arm in this color, and then you stick them together like a model. Or you just print it in one color and then paint it. There's also a technique where you change the filament. I mean, my machine does it automatically, but effectively what it's doing is changing the filament that's being extruded. So it unloads one color and then it automatically loads in the next color. But you can do that manually too. The easy way to do it is by telling your printer to pause at a specific layer and then manually changing the filament and then telling it to resume from that layer with the new color.
But I imagine you have to be very careful that you don't move anything so that it doesn't throw it off.
When your printer is mid-print, all the stepper motors are fairly well locked in. They're not going to easily move. So you would have to intentionally move the printer in order to get it off. But that's certainly a concern when you're doing things like that.
What about the self-leveling board you was on about?
What about it?
Are they extra, or does that printer, that 5, come with that board, or do you have to get one?
I think Dennis said that doesn't come with the Ender 5. You have that on. Most printers are capable of having that be added on at a later date, because most printers of this kind are based on this are more or less based on stuff that's been around for years. The boards are fairly much all the same. All the machinery is more or less the same, just different levels of quality and stuff like that. So if you get
But
an
it's just a different plate.
if you get an Ender 3, for example, you could later on add an auto bed leveling technology to it, or you pay more upfront to get that kind of thing included as the printer. So like my Prusa Mark III, it's a $750 kit plus shipping. You put it together yourself, but everything is the highest quality. The stepper motors are high quality, the board is high quality, the wiring's high quality. It comes with the auto bed leveling. Everything is it's up there. And then you get an Ender 3 non-silent version, and it's got cheap steppers, cheap board, cheap drivers, cheap motors and everything, but it functions. And you can certainly upgrade the motors and upgrade various parts to be higher quality parts and add things like auto bed leveling to it. It depends on, you have to decide what your budget is, what features are important to you. But if you're just getting into 3D printing and you want to crank out some slot car bodies and figurines, don't worry about getting the auto bed leveling thing. The Ender 3 is perfectly capable. You just might have to double check the bed level every once in a while before you just hit print and walk away. It's just a little bit more for you to be mindful of when you get that kind of printer. And we've gone hour mark, so I'm going to stop the conversation recording here at this point in time, but we will continue talking. So everybody who's watching online, come and join us live so you can continue chatting and learning after I hit the stop button. But for now, let us say, because I'm not sure if we're going to do one next week, though we probably will, because there's nothing special happening next Wednesday for me. But for now, let's wish everybody a happy holiday, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, everyone. Best wishes for
Happy holidays.
2021.